Hello, Fei Yin and Fahana. Thanks for joining us. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. I think we'll start. It's 2:04. And this is a series, actually the third in the series that we do together, a homeschooling community, together with Thrive Psychology Clinic. So very thankful to the folks from Thrive Psychology Clinic coming together to host webinars for all the homeschooling community. And thank you for your time today. So today it's a more targeted topic, how to homeschool children with special needs. So without further ado, let's welcome Cheryl and Elisa from Thrive Psychology Clinic.
Hello. Okay, so I will start today's webinar. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar on homeschooling special needs children. So just a brief introduction about us. We are both behavioral therapists from Thrive Psychology Clinic. And my name is Alyssa, and I've been working with children facing different developmental needs, such as autism and ADHD. So I employ various techniques during my sessions, such as applied behavioral analysis, alongside with neurocognitive therapy, which is a therapy that Thrive Psychology Clinic provides. And we will be elaborating more on that later on. Yeah, so I have also experience in conducting workshops for children and adolescents aimed at helping them develop important life skills, such as stress management, leadership, and self-management. Yeah. So now Cheryl will be introducing herself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl. I'm also a behavioral therapist here at Thrive Psychology Clinic. So I've worked with children for a wide range of this developmental disabilities.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl, you're a little soft, just a little.
Oh, hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is it better?
It's a little soft, yep.
Okay, just let me know if I need to be louder also. Yeah, okay, so I've worked with children for a wide range of developmental disabilities through my role as an educational therapist and special education teacher at several early intervention centers in Singapore. So I also employ techniques like applied behavioral analysis in classroom management, discrete trial training, and the planning of curriculum according to children's individualized developmental goals. So I'm also an avid volunteer at various social service organizations, helping children and youths in both academic and behavioral management, some of which may include challenging behaviors like oppositional or impulsivity and anger issues, etc.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. So now before we move on to the webinar, we'll just briefly introduce Thrive Psychology Clinic. Yeah. So we are an extension of the School of Positive Psychology and Mind Culture. And Mind Culture is a private company that was established in 2013 for mostly adults and the elderly. So for Thrive Psychology Clinic, while we also deal with clients from older ages, we also focus on children and adolescents by providing holistic, innovative, and cutting-edge psychological treatment for them. So a wide range of services that we provide can include virtual reality therapy, which was a recent therapy that we had launched in the past year. We also have neurotechnology, hypnotherapy, behavioral therapy, and we have a team of behavioral therapists that deal with a range of children and adolescents facing different challenging behaviors. Yeah. So now we will move on to our webinar, and these are the aspects that we'll be touching on. Firstly, we'll be talking about how to understand your child and recognize the developmental needs that they have in order to optimize the homeschooling environment for them. Secondly, we will touch briefly on ways that we can facilitate their learning in the homeschooling environment by mainly establishing a routine and schedule. Next, we also have some teaching strategies that we will be teaching you and you can adopt in your own home with your child. Yes, and lastly, we will be touching briefly on our services that we have that you might wish to consider. Yeah. So now in the first section, we'll be talking about understanding your child and his or her developmental needs. Homeschooling provides a truly individualized educational experience for each and every child. So as parents, the first and most important step to undertake before we can embark on homeschooling your child is to first understand their developmental needs. Special needs constitute a broad range of disabilities, so it is important to be well informed about the specifics of your child's condition. So there are 4 questions that serve to guide you in finding out more about your child's specific needs and abilities characteristic of their disability. The first question includes finding out the predisposing factors unique to their diagnosis. So what are the inherent biological and cognitive factors that perpetuate their diagnosis or the developmental needs that they are facing? So with the knowledge of these biological and cognitive factors in mind, we can then ask ourselves, how do these underlying factors translate into behavioral and psychological factors? This will be in terms of their challenging behaviors that they might exhibit, or their cognitive thought processes, or the specific needs that they might display. Then moving on, we can go on to analyze their individual strengths and weaknesses, as this can inform the appropriate intervention strategies that we can adopt for our child. And we'll be elaborating more on this later on as well. Lastly, it is important for us to find out what works for your children with their diagnosis, as effective practices previously backed by research and evidenced by many case studies may work for your child as well. Nevertheless, adopting these intervention strategies wholly may not be as effective as opposed to adapting these practices to suit the individualized needs of your child. As every child is different, including those with the same diagnosis, they might face different developmental needs. I'll elaborate more on this as we proceed on how you can identify, as well as some ways you can adopt tailored interventions and supports for your child. Importantly, it is best to consult a professional well-versed in the disorder to assist you in answering these above questions and getting to know your child better. Moving on, there has been stigma associated with homeschooling, not just on a societal level, but also within the community, as those who want homeschooling may be hesitant to go through with it due to the rumors and talks from other parents that may arise. As such, there lies a negative connotation behind homeschooling. And although this stigmatization has greatly reduced over the years, it is important to debunk the stigma behind homeschooling. To do this, we'll be highlighting the benefits of homeschooling that have been proven effective in teaching children with special needs, which mainstream schooling do not typically provide. So, different disabilities require different accommodations and supports, as well as intervention strategies. For example, children with ADHD often require shorter lessons and untimed tests. Children with autism may need visual accommodations such as visual charts and flashcards. And then for children with learning disabilities such as dyslexia, they can also benefit from worksheets with visual aids, assistive technology, and books on audio tape. So in the US, a year-long study was conducted with children with learning disabilities, and it revealed that homeschool students averaged 6 months gain in reading compared to only 1/2 month gain by special public school students. Furthermore, homeschool special needs students during the same year gained 8 months in written language skills compared to the public school counterparts, who only gained 2.5 months. This study shows that parents, despite not being certified as academic teachers, can also create instructional environments at home that assist students with learning disabilities to improve their academic skills. And the remarkable gains of homeschooled children, as shown in this study, may also be affected by the other advantages brought about by homeschooling, which I will be elaborating on next. Other accommodations can also include altering the learning pace deemed suitable for the child's learning progress in homeschooling environments. Next, one-to-one individualized instruction approach can also be provided in homeschooling. And it allows us to not only focus on academic goals, but also behavioral, motor, social, language, and communication goals. And this can be done with the help of individualized education plan, which we'll be also elaborating on further later. So with these goals in mind, we can adapt lessons and curriculum to cater to the specific needs of the child. In addition, with some of the challenging behaviors which children may exhibit, it would be easier to manage these behaviors in a one-to-one setting as opposed to a typical classroom setting with many students. Thirdly, introducing new learning opportunities in a safe, supportive environment at home is much beneficial for a child compared to a typical school setting. as some children may be extremely sensitive to external stimuli in their environment due to their developmental needs that they face. And it also can provide a low pressure environment at home, as the learning pace in typical classrooms may be too fast for them. Fourthly, the homeschool setting also allows you to set up a home classroom that is ideal for your child, and you can keep distractions to a minimum, and these distractions are typically found in typical classroom settings and cannot be really controlled, such as maybe other students being noisy or making a mess around the class, and this can be quite disruptive for the child with special needs, especially if they need to concentrate or they work well in a quiet and comfortable environment. Homeschooling also provides a flexible schedule, individualized schedule as well, as it allows you to work around many appointments that your child may have, such as doctor's appointments, medical checkups, sessions with therapists or psychologists, and this may be difficult with a typical school timetable. Children's needs also can be met, such as their attention span, learning abilities, and extra time for learning. And these all can be incorporated into the individualized homeschooling schedule. Lastly, homeschooling can nurture confident learners. With the individualized instructional approach, it builds on the child's strengths to optimize their learning, and this can boost their self-confidence as they start to recognize their unique talents and capabilities. To further illustrate the benefits of homeschooling, we have done a comparison between the advantages of homeschooling and the mainstream schooling environment. So as you can see, the benefits of homeschooling far exceed those of mainstream schooling, with the only difference being the advantage for social opportunities and social support that is available in mainstream schooling. But then again, as mentioned previously, experience of bullying may arise when children with special needs are placed in mainstream schools, which can hamper the opportunity for them to be exposed to social others and harness their social skills. Furthermore, social skills can be developed even in homeschooling kids. This can be facilitated by parents arranging play dates for a child with other kids. And it will be best to arrange play dates with another child of similar developmental needs first, to have your child familiarize themselves with a small social setting and practice their social skills. And as your child gradually becomes comfortable with socializing with other peers, and they also show progress in their social skills, you can slowly progress to group play dates for your child. Since you have touched on the benefits of homeschooling in the previous slide, I'll focus on the aspect of mainstream schooling here. So the first aspect, specialized accommodations, is typically not provided in mainstream schooling, as they have their own teaching formats and learning structure for all students in adherence with the education system. So these teaching arrangements may not benefit our special needs children, as they may have specific individualized needs that vary from their other peers. So for instance, children with learning disabilities may need more time to process learning content and complete tasks as compared to other students. However, based on the uniform teaching methods and standard instructional format adopted in mainstream schools, these children may struggle to catch up and perform well with their best abilities. In addition, typical classroom settings typically have a ratio of 10 to 20 students to one teacher, which means that teachers will have to spread their attention and resources across many children. So consequently, students with their specific developmental needs may be overlooked or neglected due to the teacher's need to focus on all children at once, reducing his or her attention on each child. So for children with special needs, this hinders their ability to perform well in school, as they may not be receiving the appropriate support and interventions that cater to their specific needs. Thirdly, mainstream schools also hardly provide a safe and conducive environment, with so many students in class that may be distracting, as well as other environmental stimuli which may not be helpful for the child's learning. Moreover, with the high risk of bullying experienced by children with specific disabilities, this reduces the safety and conduciveness of their learning environment as well. So for alternative learning approaches, children can benefit from homeschooling, as it allows us to incorporate creative teaching methods which will be most suitable and yet effective based on the child's needs, capabilities, and strengths. Some unique ways of learning for the child can include incorporating interactive games and puzzles into learning, or activities that teach concepts through songs, graphics, videos, and using visual aids or charts to facilitate learning. Multisensory learning accessories can be adopted as well. And there are many more other strategies you can adopt, but that is based on what your child needs and what your child is good at. But on the other hand, mainstream schools typically follow conventional teaching practices to ensure uniformity across schools and adherence to the education system. And these teaching strategies may not be effective for children with special needs who have different unique strengths, weaknesses, and abilities. However, despite the advantages of homeschooling in enabling the incorporation of alternative, fun, and creative learning approaches to optimize the kids' learning, one risk that may arise would be the blurring of boundaries between schoolwork and play. When fun learning approaches are adopted and boundaries between work and play are blurred, it is difficult to establish work time and play time, and subsequently children may not be able to focus and perform when it's learning time, since they may still be in their play mode. And this will be further elaborated by Cheryl later. And another important disclaimer to note would be that not all children with their specific developmental needs will be disadvantaged in mainstream schools, as there are some children with special needs who can still thrive in a mainstream school and achieve the proper learning and developmental milestones. It is crucial to understand your child and examine his or her performance within the school setting before deciding whether an alternative learning environment, such as homeschooling, will be beneficial for him or her. So now I'll be passing on the time to Cheryl, who will be going through in more detail ways you can make the homeschooling experience more effective for your child's development and learning.
Thanks, Alyssa. Okay, so one effective way you can help to hone your child's homeschooling experience is by establishing a daily routine for your child. So I know this sounds very simple, but it's also something that will really allow you to properly demarcate boundaries between work and play within the home environment, which actually is a very important it's actually a very important factor for special needs children for several reasons, which we'll elaborate later on. So when special needs children have predictable routines, problem behaviors tend to be less prevalent. Oftentimes, you may find that they display problem behaviors in order to communicate their frustration due to the inability to express themselves in words or in language. So knowing when activities will happen can help to reduce some of these behaviors, as well as the potential stress and anxiety stemming from uncertainties. So having an established schedule to follow, knowing what is expected of them at different timings, and how long they have to get their tasks done, can help them manage their time and behavior better. So schedules and timetables are great tools to help communicate information about what to expect and what is going to happen. So here's an example of what a typical routine may look like. So using daily visual charts like this can engage your child and make it easier for them to visualize their schedule for the day. The use of visual aids and symbols instead of purely just text may be useful for children who cannot read or require more visual prompts to follow through with schedules. For example, children with autism spectrum disorder. So another important thing is making sure that the symbols we use for their daily schedules are appropriate for their age and their developmental needs. So of course, the symbols we have here are just also for aesthetic purposes, but if you were to look at symbols that we use for children with ASD in particular, they may be very colorful, they might be quite big as well. So it really differs from children to children based on their needs. So in addition, one can also consider breaking down daily schedules into small manageable tasks and mini routines. The use of a visual countdown timer may also be beneficial, which can serve as an indicator of when the next activity starts and a gauge to their next break time. So this can be very helpful for children with ADHD, for instance, who typically struggle with having sustained attention and focus in tasks. So having a timer will really just allow them to be able to regulate themselves during the given time, and so that they can have a gauge as to when they can have their next break. So a few other important considerations include consistency in drawing clear boundaries between work and play. So a routine can only be effectively established if kept to it consistently. This is especially important in situations like homeschooling, where the boundaries between work and play in the home environment are already blurred. So when the boundaries are blurred, as mentioned by Alyssa earlier, children may find that they have a hard time diverting their concentration towards tasks if they are still in the play mode, or if they associate, this area of the house with play. So one simple but important thing that you can do is to maybe physically demarcate different areas for different objectives. So for example, having a room or area specifically for learning, another one just for play. So you can have make sure that you don't put toys or anything too distracting in the learning or classroom areas, so as to eliminate eliminate all distractions in the event that, your child is someone that doesn't work too well with too many things going on in the room. So consistency is key for maintaining your child's progress and ensuring that they do not unlearn or regress from important skill sets that I believe you as parents have took a long time to establish. So as mentioned earlier, so having this environment with clear segregations can be very beneficial. So the second thing we can see is accommodation of other people's schedules. So to incorporate the schedules of other people who are in the household, other family members. So other children and parents who are working at home or having their own schedules are going to have their own responsibilities as well. So for example, if your child needs to do a numeracy activity and it is something that they would typically require assistance on, then you want to make sure that you don't schedule numeracy at the same time as your own projects that can't be interrupted. So as such, it would be good to assess and be aware of the tasks which your child can complete independently versus the tasks that they require assistance from you so that you can match your schedule to that of your child's. So the third thing you can look at is flexibility. So this may sound quite ironic, and although many special needs children, they do benefit from predictable routines and schedules, flexibility comes also in giving the child the freedom to choose between a variety of choices within the fixed schedule. So for instance, the schedule can indicate that, it's time for writing, and the child might be able to choose between writing with a pencil, a marker, or a crayon. Or they might even be able to pick the type of paper or where they will do the writing in terms of location, perhaps sitting on the floor at the kitchen table just for a change in environment. So having choices within a predictable routine also allows the child to have some semblances of control over their day, which many children enjoy. So that would be good for them. So we'll be now moving to some teaching strategies which you can adopt at home. One key strategy that may be beneficial for special needs children is the setting of clear goals for your child. Similar to progress reports one may have in school, parents may also find it useful to set quarterly or yearly goals to aid them and their child in the homeschooling process. So two main types of goals can be focused on, educational and behavioral. So educational goals involve identifying essential skills in core academic subjects like language and numeracy that a child has yet to master or requires work on, whereas behavioral goals involve identifying a child's negative behaviors that require tackling, such as scheming behaviors, lack of eye contact, or lack of sustained attention on tasks. So in the process of goal setting, it is also important for you to make sure that these goals are feasible and realistic for your child. After evaluating what's most pressing for your child, be it learning to speak in complete sentences or to attend and have sustained attention on tasks, parents can pick out a few goals that you'd like your child to work on. So it's important for you to remember that that you should pick goals that are workable within the select time frame. So oftentimes we find that there's so many things we want our child to work on. We want to be very ambitious. We want to push them to their full abilities. But I think what's really important is to just select goals that are workable and feasible within the select time frame that you have. So for example, we mentioned just now, it could be a year, it could be quarterly, because we also want to build confidence in our child. And for them to be able to hit the milestones and the goals that we set, it will be very beneficial in building their confidence and their self-esteem as well. So importantly, it would also be beneficial for you to discuss your child's goals with professionals in the field. So even though we understand that it might be homeschooling for your child, but to discuss your child's goals with professionals like psychologists or special education learning support teachers as well as therapists would be extremely beneficial in helping you to set realistic and feasible goals for your child's progress. So we'll also discuss more about this in the later segment of our webinar. So now Alyssa will share with us some useful behavioral techniques to adopt at home.
So as some children with special needs may exhibit challenging or maladaptive behaviors which hinder their learning and development, and especially in homeschooling children, it is important that we know how to manage and effectively reduce these behaviors in order to promote their development and optimize their capabilities for learning. And as we all know, challenging behaviors can also be quite disruptive for our family in general, as they can be quite traumatizing or they might affect our physical, emotional health. So it's important to know these useful behavioral techniques and know how to manage their challenging behaviors. So before all else, it's important to identify and familiarize yourself with their behaviors. And to do this, we can typically follow the ABC protocol. So A stands for antecedent and includes knowing the triggers or series of events that typically occur before the meltdown or display of maladaptive behaviors. And then B, which would be the behaviors, you need to familiarize yourself with what are the typical behaviors or signs that your child may exhibit whenever they're having a meltdown. And lastly, C stands for consequence, and this entails finding out what calms your child or strategies that you can adopt to prevent a further meltdown. So by following this ABC protocol, it helps you to understand your child further and be able to know exactly what kind of behavioral techniques that you can adopt after that. So as Cheryl mentioned earlier, an important strategy to adopt is establishing a fixed routine for your child, as it not only reduces the frequency of challenging behaviors displayed, but it also makes it easier for you to manage these behaviors in the event that it arises. So another behavioral technique that I'll be touching on will be creating first, then charts. So first or then charts are a simple way to start with immediate behavior reinforcement. And this type of system works extremely well with students with special needs. So first, they will have to complete a simple task, and then they are rewarded immediately with something. So it's important to note that the reinforcement has to be motivating for the student or for the child, but it cannot be too strong a motivating reinforcer that it makes it harder to work on harder tasks later in the future, since subsequent reinforcements may not be strong enough as a reward for the child. So yeah, it's good to start from small rewards, but still it motivates your child to work towards the goal, and then gradually move on to stronger reinforcers as you help the child tackle more difficult tasks as they progress in their developmental abilities. Yeah. The second will be adopting a token economy system. So this is similar to the first 10 charts in that the child has to work for a longer amount of time to earn a number of tokens to receive the reinforcement. So moreover, teachers or parents can incorporate multiple types of expectations during a token economy system. For example, if the child is able to stay in his or her seat for 2 minutes, they receive a token. And once they receive 5 tokens, they can be rewarded with, let's say, extra playtime. So for this type of system, it's important that children are the ones putting the tokens on their board so that they can keep track of their progress towards their reward. And we can also work towards the eventual goal of self-regulation. So being able to reduce negative behaviors and increase positive behaviors with the goal of their reward in mind. Yeah. So moreover, it is also important to note that these systems only work with positive behaviors. So it doesn't work when a token is taken away for negative behaviors displayed, as this diminishes their motivation towards getting the reward, thereby impeding our efforts of using this token economy system as a whole. So instead, when they exhibit negative behaviors, we can allow them the chance to try again. Or let's say they fail to complete the task successfully or reach whatever goals that we had given them, we can give them chances to try again, thereby also working on task perseverance. Lastly, we can also give positive reinforcement, and this can be done in the form of giving behavior-specific praise. So for many kids, the more responses and reactions they get from you for negative behaviors, the more negative behaviors they may give you, because it is sort of like getting the attention that they want, and this is not a good form of reinforcement. So rather, we can give more positive reactions for the positive behaviors that they display. This doesn't mean that you ignore the negative behaviors, but rather you choose which behaviors that you can tell is them wanting a reaction from you, and giving them this reaction is not a healthy thing for both of you. Yeah. So focus on the positive behaviors that they display. So let's say maybe they might display a negative behavior, and right after they're able to regulate themselves and instead produce positive behaviors. We can focus on that instead and be like, oh, good job. You know how to calm yourself down and not, for example, hit me with the toy. Yeah. So having said that, your praise cannot be generic. So make the praise specific to the behavior that you want to see, and use language to communicate specifically the behavior you wish to see, and in a way that they can understand as well. So in creating an optimal learning environment for children, it is important to adopt these behavioral techniques in conjunction with cognitive strategies. So some of the cognitive strategies we mentioned earlier include the use of visual aids, such as flashcards for more visual learners, or the incorporation of games or puzzles to facilitate learning, and so on. So now Cheryl will be touching on the last part, which is our services.
So lastly, we will touch briefly on some services which we provide that can better assist and enhance your child's homeschooling experience. As mentioned earlier, it will be highly encouraged for parents to work with various professionals to ensure that your child is getting the optimal resources for his or her learning and developmental progress. So these services can hence be adopted in conjunction with your child's homeschooling experience to ensure a holistic intervention approach for your child. So some of the services that we offer include behavioral therapy. So with our team of experienced behavioral therapists, we seek to help children and adolescents overcome and manage their difficulties, and in the process, reduce their challenging and maladaptive behaviors. So some of the techniques that we've mentioned to you guys earlier in this webinar are just a few of the techniques that we use in our day-to-day work as a behavioral therapist. But of course, there's many more techniques that we also incorporate into our work with children. So we also hope to promote healthy, positive behavior choices and actions. So we, at our psychology clinic, we also offer neurocognitive therapy. We utilize highly advanced neurotechnology to assist us in understanding the neural processes in the brains of our clients in real time and provide neurofeedback. So we train executive functioning skills such as attention, auditory and visual processing, cognitive flexibility, decision-making abilities, sequencing, spatial awareness, and working memories. So we find that it's very useful for children, especially, for example, with attention difficulties or with memory deficits. So these really helps. And we also do neurocognitive therapy in a series of games that are engaging for the child as well. So that's quite an interesting therapy that we do offer at Thrive Psychology. And lastly is our newest therapy service called Kogoland. So Kogoland is actually a digital attention training program that is developed to complement mainstay ADHD treatments. So it utilizes neurotechnology as well to measure, track, and train attention, focus, and mental workload. So it is sort of similar to neurocognitive therapy, but Kogoland is a much more ADHD-focused treatment that we have recently just introduced at Thrive Psychology.
Yeah, so in addition, we also provide a wide range of assessments to cater to the individual developmental needs of different children and adolescents. So these assessments target at different disabilities and disorders such as autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, intellectual disabilities, developmental and learning disabilities as well. So these assessments are typically offered for child and adolescent clients looking for a diagnosis. And we also offer these assessments for children's applications into special education schools as well. So in the case of homeschooling, these assessments for applications to special education schools may not be appropriate, but it can be, you can consider it in the future if you ever might need it. And these assessments may also facilitate your child's access to resources such as therapies and other psychological services, as most service providers now typically require a proof of a diagnosis before the appropriate intervention and support strategies can be provided. So we have now come to the end of our presentation and we'll be taking any questions that you all may have.
All right, thanks, Elisa. I think Fei Yan, maybe you want to mute yourself because Fei Yan currently has a special needs child who's attending the mainstream education, but she's in the process of considering switching over to homeschooling. So Fei Yan, maybe you want to share a bit of your experience and can ask the experts if you have encountered any problems. Fei. Hello, Fei. Or Fahana, do you have any questions with regards to handling your child? Okay, maybe I'll just kick off the question first lah. So I'll just have a question because homeschoolers, the parents, sometimes we spend a lot of time with our child at home. So what are some of the tips or some of the things that you might want to advise us to look out for in terms of self-care for the parent who is a full-time caregiver for this special needs kids?
Actually, in our previous webinar, we did touch on managing the family burnout or something like that, right? I remember. Yeah, so actually, if you guys are interested in this topic also, I believe we have it recorded, right? That one
Recorded already.
Yeah, so maybe just generically speaking, yeah, I think actually there have been many instances where parents have actually approached us, to say that, they're really burning out, especially if they are the sole caregiver. So if they are just the only one and especially if their child is really developmentally challenging. Yeah, so I think definitely it would be useful for parents to actually seek also maybe once in a while to seek professional advice also to maybe have some counseling sessions here and there, because I think all of us, we do need a time to unwind, and as much as we may be used to our child's developmental needs or their behaviors, but to really go through that by yourself, let's say for years, I think it's definitely very mentally draining for you also. So you definitely get to speak to a psychologist or speak to a professional about your needs or your worries. I think that's definitely something that I would think is very important for parents if they are feeling the burnout, if they're feeling the caregiver stress. Anything else to add, Alyssa?
Yeah, I think on top of that, like working alone definitely is tough. And I think what can complement will be having working collaboratively with professionals such as behavioral therapists, speech or language therapists, or educational therapists to complement your child's learning. So some of the strategies that you may implement at home may be different from what professionals can also provide. So another alternative can be to have home sessions for your child. So maybe hire a therapist to come over and do some of the sessions, some of the lessons for you. So that way it sort of reduces your workload, but it doesn't compromise your child's learning. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So the second question will be, what are some of the interventions that you guys can help in terms of handling, let's say, a young child with special needs, maybe the age of 4 to 6 in kindergarten, nursery? What are some of the programs or some of the intervention that y'all can do for a parent who is struggling with special needs kids between the age of 4 to 6?
I think first you need to find out what are the developmental needs or the disabilities that he is facing. Yeah, so that will greatly help to tailor the intervention strategies that we can adopt for him. Yeah, so let's say if it's sort of challenging behavior such as tantrums, defiance to parents, like not listening to parents' instructions. So all these we typically can do behavioral therapy, because this one, it's easy to mold kids, young kids, to adopt the correct or appropriate behaviors and eliminate all these maladaptive behaviors. Yeah, but if it's other sort of difficulties that the child is facing, then that would need the advice of a psychologist, a professional, to advise on what kind of interventions that we can provide. Yeah.
So is it true to say that the earlier we intervene, the better it is in a sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think just adding on to what Alyssa mentioned about how intervening early. I think early intervention is definitely something that is very useful for special needs children. So when you intervene from young, you can actually see children making a lot of improvement in terms of their behavioral, so steaming behaviors and eye contact and attention. I think those are the three areas where you see a lot of improvement, especially in the early ages. Yeah, so definitely early intervention is definitely recommended, because and I think one thing to note is that with all the therapy services that we offer, or even other special education schools or early intervention schools offer, they are all very individualized and very personalized to the child's needs. Yeah, so I think that's a good thing. So even though, with every case you give us, perhaps it'll be like, oh, behavioral therapy, just like it's like a very overarching thing, very generic name. But within that behavioral therapy for different children with different disabilities, we also will personalize and individualize. And so I think that is one thing to take note. And of course, only a professional can advise you on that. Yeah. But I definitely do think that what Alyssa mentioned earlier about how incorporating therapy sessions into your homeschooling, I think that's very useful, because we do see a lot of parents, as I mentioned just now, when they convert their children to homeschooling, like full-time homeschooling, it's very different suddenly because, at first they're going to schools maybe for the whole day or for half a day, and suddenly now they're just permanently at home all the time. So a lot of parents find that it's very difficult to manage, as like they can't manage like the transition to a suddenly a full-time caregiver. So having like a therapist come in maybe twice or 3 times a week, it will definitely help to alleviate the stress, and also have someone to affirm you, have someone to give you advice. To work together with a home-based therapist, I think that would definitely be good for homeschooling children.
Yeah, because I think this is especially true for Fei Yan, because she shared with me earlier. We had a conversation. Her child is currently attending the mainstream, but because the child cannot adapt into the mainstream, so it's in the process of taking the child out of the mainstream and homeschool. Yeah, so I think Fei Yan, I think this will be particular note of you. Maybe you want to note down, and just pay special attention. I think you can reach out to the guys, Elisa or Cheryl at Thrive Clinic, and reach out to them for help. Yeah. So, Fana, you got any questions? Or Fei Yan, you yourself have any questions? Any more further questions? You just give a moment or two. Okay, feel free to ask if you have any questions. Okay, Fana, okay, very good, no questions. Fei Yan, any questions from you? You can type, it's not convenient to talk. Oh, Fana, just to check your child, how old is your child, Fana? 6 years old. So we're going to are you going to send to primary school or homeschool? Are you going to homeschool your child? Oh, SPED. Okay, SPED. Okay, can. So Fei Yan, I understand, is taking out in the process. Okay, if no more questions, so I'd just like to thank Elisa and Cheryl. Thank you guys for your time and your generous sharing. If you want to rewatch, this will be on YouTube. I'll post it on the Facebook group as well. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And if you have any further queries, which you wish to direct to us, feel free to contact us via any of the different modes of contact that we have provided here, and our staff will be more than happy to assist you. So thank you for attending this webinar with Sharon and I, and we wish you all a nice day ahead.
Yep, thank you.